Hi, this video is about solving second-order polynomials, also known as quadratic equations. A second-order or second-degree polynomial looks something like this. There's a power on the variable there that's squared. That's why it's second order. And maybe another standard first power, and then maybe just a constant. So I wrote this example 2x squared minus 4x plus 5 equals 0 in what we call standard form. And standard form is in order of decreasing powers of x. So you start with the highest power, which is 2, and then 1, and then 0, because x to the 0 is 1. And so in general, you would write a quadratic equation like this in standard form. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. When you're solving that equation, there are a number of options, but eventually in math class, if you haven't done it yet, you will encounter what's called the quadratic formula. And that's a way to solve a quadratic equation, a second-degree polynomial. And it looks like this. If you're familiar with it, it probably looks very comfortable to you. And if you've not seen it before, it might look a little strange, but we'll work out an example and you'll see how it's used. In either case, I would put it on my equation card for your physics class. So minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by twice a. That's called the quadratic formula. Let's use that in an example. Let's say we've got the quadratic equation x squared minus x equals 12. Well, the first thing that you should notice about that is two things, I guess. The first thing is one thing. The second thing is the next to first thing, I guess. And the first thing is that the highest power in x is 2. That means it's a quadratic equation. And it's not in standard form. It's close, but not quite there. So let's rearrange the terms in the equation so it's in standard form. And I can do that just by subtracting 12 from both sides. And so I get x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. And now this is in standard form. The a coefficient is the coefficient on the x squared term, and that's 1. The coefficient on the x term is negative 1. And the constant here is negative 12. So a is 1, b is negative 1, c is negative 12. And then we'll use the quadratic formula. I wrote it out here, the formula, the equation, and then I substituted all the values. So everywhere I see a b, I put in a negative 1. Everywhere in a 1, and c is negative 12. And when I do that, I get this mess. So minus negative 1 is positive 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. 4 times 1 times negative 12 is negative 48, but then we're subtracting that, so it's positive 48. So this reduces down to 1 plus or minus the square root of 49 divided by 2. It's 2a on the bottom. Which means that it's 1 plus or minus 7, because 7 is the square root of 49, divided by 2. So I either add 7 to 1 and divide by 2, or I subtract 7 by 1 and divide by 2. And then I get 8 over 2 or negative 6 over 2. And so my answers, my solutions for that equation are these two down here, 4 or negative 3. In other words, if I plugged in 4 for x here, I would get 12. Or if I plugged in negative 3, I would also get 12. Those are the solutions to the equation, and there are two. And if you have a quadratic equation, there will always be two solutions. Always be two solutions. So that's one way to solve that equation, is to use the quadratic formula. But there are two other ways, which are probably a little faster for you, less chance to make a mistake. One is using a calculator program, and I know many of you have these TI graphing calculators, and if you have an 84 plus or an 83 plus, this program is probably already in there. And if it's not, we have some cables and maybe we can transfer it to your calculator. Just let me know. But it's under the apps menu, and the program actually does multiple things. It's called on this one PLYSMLT2, which stands for Polynomial Solver and Simultaneous Equation Solver, the second edition. Right? So I find that on my apps menu and hit enter. Enter again. And then poly root finder, we want to find the roots or the zeros of the polynomial function. Choose that. It's second order because the power is 2. Hit next. And then I plug in my coefficients, which I believe were 1, minus 1, and minus 12. And then I hit solve, and lo and behold, I get the same thing. I'm not sure you can see that on the camera, but it's outputting 4 and negative 3, which are the answers we got before. But there's another way. That's probably the simplest way. That's the way I prefer to do it. And that is to actually graph the function. So you could go to your y equals menu, on your calculator, and you can plug in the function x squared minus x minus 12 and plot it. And wherever that function crosses the x-axis, those are called the zeros of the function. So those are the solutions. It crosses at 4 and -3, and you can try it on your calculator and see that.